Hi, this is Lou with MeterBuilder. In this video we're going to show how to run the self-test. This is useful after the kit is assembled to verify that all functions are operating properly. It can also be used at any other time for diagnostic purposes. Okay, to run the self-test, what we have to do is select the self-test menu. So I'll select that on line 4 of the LCD. Self-test start is the first menu item, and so I'll hit the first menu button to start the test. And the first test will basically sequence through all of the LEDs to verify that the connections on the ribbon cables from the boards are working properly. You'll also hear the alarm relay click twice, and you'll hear the sounder enunciate as well. So all of those tests are being done in the first sequence of tests. Okay, those all check out. The diagnostics then move into the switch test routine. At this point, it's asking me to depress each of the front panel switches in sequence. And these are ordered sequentially from 1 to 13. Okay, you don't hit the power button in this test, but if there's a switch indication when no button is pushed, or you fail to get an indication when a button is pushed, there's a wiring problem of some type. Now, of course, you could never progress to the next test if none of your switches worked, so there is a 10-second timeout on this, so if you leave this alone for 10 seconds it'll move to the next test. On the other hand, if everything does work properly and you want to sequence to the next test quickly, just tap this button 3 times. Okay, it's instructing us to proceed with the next test, which is the panel meter test. And the panel meter test drives each of the 6 panel meter outputs so that you can verify continuity. You'll see the forward needle and reflected needle on the internal meter move, and we have one external panel meter hooked up, and you'll see that be driven as well. And if you're running this test after assembly, you probably want to connect the voltmeter to all 4 external panel meter jacks just to verify that all 4 are working. In this particular case, we're verifying that just one of the external panel meter jacks is running. So let me hit any of the 4 menu buttons to continue this test. The next diagnostic test checks the 7-segment displays, including the external 7-segment device, and we have both the external 7-segment display as well as the external bar graph, which will be tested in a subsequent test. So let me hit any of the menu buttons to continue, and you'll see. Let me go ahead and move that light off so you can see it a little bit better. The digits are basically driven in sequence. The next test is the external bar graph test. Each of the 40 segments is driven in sequence. The next test checks the serial port. So we'll hit any menu button, and it's telling us that output is being generated on the serial port. Now I have the serial port connected to the PC, and basically what's being printed out is just a quick test message, MB-1 test message. So if you get that far, you know that the output port of the RS-232 interface is working properly. The next test checks the input function on the RS-232 port. So let me hit any of the 4 menu buttons to proceed. And it's asking me to type a lowercase a from my TerraTerm window, and I'm going to let it time out to show you what the failure looks like. It's indicating that it didn't receive the A character, so that represents a failure. And now I'll show you what it looks like when the function works properly. Okay, this time we're going to run the test successfully. I'm going to type an A in on my TerraTerm window, and the LCD displays that it did receive the expected character. So we can move on to the next test. The next test checks the front panel pot. Let me hit a menu button. And it's basically asking me to turn the front panel pot, and this LED should vary from 1 through 100 just to verify that the front panel pot that's used for adjustment and other functions in MB1 is working properly. Okay, and we've got it cranked all the way up, and that test is working properly. The last test verifies that the coupler inputs are working properly. Let me hit a menu, or let me hit the exit button in this particular case, which corresponds to the first menu button. Okay, and what it's asking me to do now is to apply a signal to each of the 4 coupler ports. I'll turn the meter around to show you what has to be done, and then we'll turn the meter back to its front face so that we can see the indications. The last test verifies that the coupler inputs are working, and what we do there is we basically take our RCA cable assembly and connect to either the 50 microamp or 200 microamp source. This is simply giving us a positive voltage through a resistor to use as a voltage source for the coupler detection circuitry. And okay, I've got my other input here, and I move through the 8 coupler inputs, both the forward and reflected, for the 4 coupler ports, and you'll see in the front it's indicating which port I'm applying the signal to, but it's also giving me an indicator on the annunciator. The annunciator is useful for in case you have to do some troubleshooting without looking at the front panel. So we'll turn it around and show you what the display looks like while we're probing the 8 input coupler ports. Okay, we're back on the front panel, and now I'll probe the 8 ports. Okay, it looks like all of our coupler ports are working. So at this point, you have a pretty thorough checkout of the hardware. Hope this was helpful. Talk to you soon.